time for another episode of the Animated Critics. Coming to you live from the studio, it's your favorite movie mavericks, T and J.
Thank you for joining us for an all-new edition of This Week in Movies. I'm Jay, here with my co-host T. This week we'll be talking about the continued failure of horror films in the 3D genre and the hopes for Saw 3D. We'll also be discussing films with strange titles and why they don't do well at the box office. And we'll also be taking a look at the new Red Band trailer for the Dwayne Johnson film, Faster. But first, a look at the numbers.
In at number one and holding well, we have The Social Network with an estimated $15.5 million gross and a total now of $46 million. And just as you predicted, this has held on to the number one slot for the second weekend.
Yeah, I thought once word of mouth got around that this was a good film, that it would do well in its second weekend, and this is an amazing hold. It's now made in 2 weeks what I thought it would have made last weekend, to tell you the truth, but nevertheless, this looks like it's on course for the $70 to $80 million range, and that's before any possible Oscar nominations.
In at number two, we have Life as We Know It, estimated $14.5 million, which I actually think is pretty decent for a Katherine Heigl star at this point. Her career's pretty much gone down the tubes.
I would agree with you on that. I haven't seen a lot of advertising for this film, and what I did see kind of made it look like a semi-sequel to Knocked Up, and I'm impressed that it opened with these kind of numbers. But this audience, this segment of the audience, has been kind of neglected in the last few months. It didn't do any better, though, than The Killers, which didn't do well at the box office. So, good opening, but it should fade fairly quickly.
And in at number three, Secretariat, another low grosser for Disney, trying to reboot the horse dramas. $12.5 million. It is what it is.
It looked like a bad combination of Seabiscuit and The Blind Side, and I think Walt Disney did a bad job of selling this film. Terrible title, even though it's the name of the horse, and all around just very unappealing film.
The big surprise, I think, is My Soul to Take, coming in at last in the top five with almost $7 million for the weekend, which is pretty low considering that Drag Me to Hell opened with almost $16 million just a year ago.
Yeah, this is the most surprising thing of the top five. I thought, especially it being October, that this would do well. It has had 87% of the audience saw this film in 3D, which means that without the 3D ticket inflation, this would have grossed probably in the $3 to $4 million range. This is a colossal failure. The ads weren't very good. Nothing distinguished it apart from the other horror films that had come out last weekend, except for Wes Craven's name. And this will be the lowest grossing film for Wes Craven in many years. Taking into account that My Soul to Take is a 3D film, and the recent glutton of horror 3D films that have come out and done very poor at the box office, Piranha 3D, this film, and now in the next few weeks we have a large release of Saw 3D coming from Lionsgate, which hopes to reinvigorate the franchise and the horror genre and the 3D genre. Do you think that Saw 3D will make a dent in the market?
I think Saw 3D has a shot, especially as being billed as the last Saw, and now it's in 3D as well. It has a shot at possibly, I think on the high end, $80 million.
I don't see it grossing that high, although I do see it doing considerably better than the last film in the series. I see it doing about $60 million. The first weekend's going to be killer, but you got to remember this is also going to go up against Paranormal Activity 2, and they're really waiting a long time for the Saw 3D release. It's going to be the weekend of Halloween that it comes out. And historically, these films have had one or two good weekends and then fade very quickly. So if it can bang out a decent opening and then hold on for one more weekend after that, we're definitely going to see another Saw film. Even though they're proclaiming that this is the last one in the series, I think we're going to see at least two more if this one does well.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe this is the last Saw movie, especially when you look at even what's happened this year with Case 39, granted, sat on the shelf for years, and Let Me In, both low grossers, and now My Soul to Take 3D low grossing. If Saw does well, we're going to see more of those. It's really the only thing. It's the big guy, you know. It's the big elephant in the room, really. I guess at this point,
it is the premier horror franchise at the moment. They're trying to make Paranormal Activity into a franchise. Don't know if that's going to work. But Saw has been around now. It's almost an institution. Every Halloween for almost a decade now, we've had a Saw film released. And I don't see any difference between this film and the last film in terms of attendance, but that 3D ticket price is really going to kick up the gross. But with the disappointing third-place opening of Disney's film Secretariat, we have to discuss the fact that the title of the film is a very peculiar name. I know it's the horse's name, but I think there should have been a title change there. Coupled with the recent release, The Guardians of Ga'Hoole, The Owls of Ga'Hoole, do you think that a film's title can affect its box office performance?
Yeah, I think that, titles in the past have definitely affected box office. And if you've looked at some movies go through a lot of name changes, even after their announcement, even after they're shot, they'll go through tests and changes. And I think that with something like The Legend of Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole, geez, wow. And The Secretariat, I thought that was like a spy thriller, a Tom Clancy type title.
I didn't know it was a film about horse racing until I saw a preview for it, but in the trades I thought it was a totally different film as well. I think that when you have a title, it has to give you a feeling of the movie, and also it has to be easily translatable through word of mouth. You think about the titles of movies that you really like. Look at right now, The Social Network. Everybody knows what that is. My Soul to Take, you can tell that that's a horror film. The Town is obviously about Beantown in Boston. Those are films that the title gives you a short glimpse into what the feel of the movie is going to be and what the storyline is. Whereas films that have complicated titles or very obscure titles tend to do very, very bad at the box office. One film we are looking forward to is a one-word titled film, Faster. We have a new Red Band adults-only trailer for the Dwayne Johnson film. This is going to set to be released in November, and I have to say this trailer is a marked improvement over that first Green Band trailer that they released months ago. How do you feel about this trailer and this film?
Well, I think the film's going to be great, and the trailer looks amazing, although I think that they just pushed a little bit over the edge to get the Red Band trailer. This really isn't a full-on Red Band trailer, in my opinion. They held a little long on some of the gun hits and stuff like that, but the movie looks great. I think it really looks like Dwayne Johnson coming back to action again, harkening back to the days of when he first started out making movies like Scorpion King and then moving on to The Rundown. This really should have been the next movie he made after The Rundown.
I think it's sad it took The Tooth Fairy for us to get Dwayne Johnson back into an action film, although I'm glad to have him back in the genre, and I do think that he is the legitimate contender to all those tough guys from The Expendables.
In my opinion, I think of him as almost a replacement for Schwarzenegger at this point. Obviously no one can fill those shoes fully, but I think that he's got that on-screen charisma that Schwarzenegger definitely had. Links for things discussed in this episode are right below. Be sure and check out the Red Band Faster trailer.
And also be sure to check out MovieMavericks.com. This week we're featuring an exclusive interview with rapper-actor Sticky Fingers. He discusses his current projects as well as past projects including Blade the television series. We also have the latest trailers and movie news on MovieMavericks.com. Thank you for joining us this week, and be sure to check back next week for the latest news coming out of Hollywood.